The sky turned green at 4:47 in the afternoon. Eleanor Morrison dropped her coffee mug. It shattered against the porch floor, brown liquid splashing across weathered wood. But she did not look down. She could not. Her eyes were locked on that color spreading across the Oklahoma horizon like a bruise forming on the face of God. She knew that green. It had killed her husband. 22 years ago, that same sickly color had painted the sky moments before an EF5 tornado touched down 3 miles from this very spot. Thomas had thrown her into the cellar. He had pushed her down those concrete steps with hands that had held her for 30 years of marriage, and then he turned back to close the doors. The tornado took him before he could get down the stairs. Eleanor had listened to her husband die. She had heard the roar of the wind swallow his scream. She had felt the door buckle inward, straining against forces no human structure was meant to withstand. And when silence finally came, when she climbed those steps and pushed open those doors, Thomas was gone. Not dead, gone. The tornado had carried him away like he weighed nothing at all. They found his body 2 miles east, tangled in the branches of an oak tree that had stood for 100 years before that day. Now that green was back. The emergency siren started screaming. Eleanor counted the seconds between each wail. 22 years of living alone had taught her to count everything. Seconds until danger arrived. Dollars until the bank account ran dry. Days without hearing another human voice. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She did not need to look at it. EF4, Creek County. Seek shelter immediately. Eleanor Morrison was 67 years old. She weighed 120 pounds. She had spent 35 years as an emergency room nurse at Creek County General before the medical bills from Thomas's funeral and Marcus's death had taken everything. She had seen trauma that would break most people. She had held dying children in her arms. She had told mothers their sons were not coming home. Nothing scared her anymore. Nothing except that green sky at night. The wind hit 50 miles per hour. Her gray hair whipped across her face, stinging her eyes. The old farmhouse groaned behind her, boards creaking like the bones of an old man struggling to stand. That is when she saw the headlights. Dozens of them, cutting through the rain on Route 44 like a snake made of fire. Moving fast, but not fast enough. The wind was shoving them sideways, threatening to dump them into ditches filled with rising water. Motorcycles. Eleanor squinted through the rain. Even at this distance, even through the chaos of the approaching storm, she could see them struggling. One bike wobbled dangerously, nearly going down before the rider corrected. Another pulled off the road, the rider's boots hitting mud as he fought to keep his machine upright. They were looking for shelter. There was no shelter out here, just Eleanor's farm and 60 acres of nothing. The nearest town was 12 miles east, and the tornado was coming from the west. These riders had maybe 4 minutes before that monster reached Route 44. 4 minutes to find cover or die. The first bike slid into her driveway. The rider was huge, black leather jacket, dark with rain, face hidden behind a soaked bandana. He killed the engine and looked around, searching for something, anything that might save his life. More bikes followed. 10, 20, 40. Eleanor's stomach dropped. She could see their patches now, the death's head grinning from leather vests. The letters stitched in red and white that made police officers reach for their weapons and ordinary citizens cross to the other side of the street. Hell's Angels. Every instinct screamed at her to run, lock the door, hide in the cellar, wait for the storm to pass and pray these men moved on. A bike went down. The rider hit the asphalt hard, his machine sliding out from under him in a shower of sparks. 2 men jumped off their bikes and ran to him, grabbing his arms, pulling him up. But something was wrong. His arm was hanging at an angle. Arms do not hang. Bone wrong. Brake wrong. Behind them, the funnel dropped from the clouds. Eleanor had seen tornadoes before. She had survived 3 of them in her 67 years on this Oklahoma farm. But this one was different. This one was a monster. A churning column of destruction that stretched from the green sky to the brown earth like the finger of an angry God reaching down to smite the sinners below, 2 miles out. Maybe less. 4 minutes had become 2. Eleanor was off the porch before she knew she was moving. Her boots hit mud. Rain slashed at her face. The wind tried to push her back, tried to keep her safe on that porch where she belonged. But Eleanor Morrison had stopped being safe 22 years ago when she watched that oak tree become her husband's grave. She ran toward the bikers, toward the Hells Angels, toward 79 of America's most feared outlaws standing in her driveway while an EF4 tornado bore down on them all. The lead rider turned toward her. Through his rain-splattered visor, she could see confusion, disbelief. An old woman in a floral dress soaked to the bone, sprinting across her own property toward a gang of Hell's Angels in the middle of the apocalypse. She must have looked insane. She did not care. "There is a cellar," she shouted over the wind, "under my barn. Reinforced concrete. It survived 2 tornadoes. You will live if you get down there now." The rider lifted his visor, gray beard streaked with rain, blue eyes cold as river stones in January, a face that had seen violence and caused violence and made no apologies for either. "Lady, do you know who we are?" Eleanor stopped 2 feet in front of him. The wind howled around them. The rain came down in sheets. And somewhere behind her, the tornado roared like a freight train running off its tracks. "I know you are about to be dead if you do not move. That tornado is 2 miles out and closing fast. It does not give a damn about your patches or your reputation or whatever the hell you think makes you scary. Move." Now, the man stared at her. 1 second, 2, 3. Then something changed in those cold blue eyes. Something that might have been respect. Something that might have been recognition of a strength he had not expected to find in a 67-year-old woman standing in the rain. "You heard her?" His voice boomed across the driveway, cutting through wind and rain and fear. "Off the bikes. Follow her. Go, go, go." 79 men abandoned their machines. 79 Hells Angels left their motorcycles in the mud and the rain and followed an old woman in a floral dress toward a barn that was shaking so hard it looked like it might collapse before the tornado even arrived. Eleanor ran. Her lungs burned. Her legs ached. She was 67 years old and she had not run like this in decades. But she kept going because behind her, 79 men were trusting her with their lives. Behind her, 79 men who had probably never trusted anyone outside their brotherhood were following a stranger into the dark. The barn doors were stuck. Rusted hinges, warped wood. 22 years of neglect had sealed them tighter than any lock. "Move." A biker shouldered her aside, not roughly, just efficiently. He grabbed the handle with both hands. 2 more joined him. 3 massive men in leather vests, muscles straining against rain-soaked fabric. They pulled together, the steel screamed. The doors gave way. Inside, the cellar entrance gaped like a wound in the earth. Concrete steps leading down into darkness. The same steps Thomas had pushed her down 22 years ago. The same darkness that had saved her life while her husband died above. "Down," Eleanor shouted. "Everyone down, single file. Move." She positioned herself at the entrance, counting heads as they poured past her. 10, 20, 30. The injured man was being carried by 2 brothers. His face was gray, shock setting in. His arm flopped uselessly at his side, bone visible through torn skin. 40, 50, 60. The wind was a living thing now. It grabbed at Eleanor's dress, trying to drag her away from the cellar entrance, trying to carry her off like it had carried Thomas. But she planted her feet and kept counting. 70, 75. "That is everyone," the leader shouted. He was the last one still above ground besides Eleanor. "Get in." Eleanor looked back. The tornado was a mile away, maybe less, a black wall eating the world. Trees were disappearing into it. Cars were disappearing into it. A barn on the neighboring property was disappearing into it. Wood and metal and decades of memories sucked up into that churning darkness. The sound was beyond description. Not wind, not thunder. Something older. Something primal. Something that made every animal instinct in Eleanor's body scream at her to run, hide, survive. She dove down the stairs. The leader followed. He grabbed the cellar doors and pulled them shut behind him. Muscles bulging, veins standing out on his neck as he fought against wind that was trying to tear those doors off their hinges. Clang, darkness, silence. For one heartbeat, everything was still. Then the monster arrived. The sound hit first, a roar so loud it seemed to bypass Eleanor's ears and vibrate directly in her chest. The concrete walls shook. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The single bare bulb that lit the cellar flickered. It flickered again. Someone was praying. Someone was crying. A big man in the corner had his hands over his ears, rocking back and forth like a child trying to escape a nightmare. Eleanor clicked on her flashlight. 79 faces emerged from the shadows. Tattooed, bearded, hard faces that had stared down police officers and rival gangs and men who wanted them dead. Faces that showed no fear in bar fights and shootouts and high-speed chases down midnight highways. But their eyes were the eyes of men who knew they might die tonight. "Everyone listen," Eleanor's voice cut through the chaos. through the roaring wind and the creaking concrete and the prayers and the soos. 78 heads turned toward her. This cellar survived two tornadoes, 1987 and 2003. Both of them were stronger than the one passing over us right now. These walls are 18 inches of reinforced concrete. The doors are steel-plated. We are going to be fine. A young biker near the back laughed nervously. He could not have been more than 22. How do you know it is weaker than those other ones? Because I am still alive to tell you about them, and I was standing right here both times. Eleanor swept her flashlight across the crowd. Now, anyone injured besides the man with the broken arm? Silence. Good. She moved through the crowd, shouldering past leather vests and rain-soaked bodies until she reached the injured man. He was propped against the wall, face white, lips pressed together against pain he was trying not to show. Name. What is your name? Your real one. The man blinked through the pain. Garrett. Okay, Garrett. I was an ER nurse for 35 years. I am going to set this arm. It is going to hurt like hell. You need something to bite down on. The leader appeared beside her. He pulled a leather wallet from his vest and handed it to Garrett. Thanks, Jax. So that was the leader's name, or at least what his brothers called him. Eleanor filed the information away and turned her attention to Garrett's arm. The break was bad. Compound fracture of both the radius and ulna. Bone fragments visible through torn skin. In a hospital, this would require surgery, pins, months of physical therapy. Here in a cellar with a tornado screaming overhead, Eleanor had her hands and 35 years of experience. It would have to be enough. On three, she said, 1. She pulled. Garrett screamed into the leather, his whole body convulsed. Two bikers grabbed his shoulders, holding him still while Eleanor worked. She could feel the bones shifting under her fingers, grinding against each other as she manipulated them back into something resembling their proper position. The sound was horrible. The sensation was worse. But Eleanor had done this before. Not often, not happily, but when ambulances were backed up and patients were dying and there was no time to wait for surgeons, she had done what needed to be done. Done. She released Garrett's arm and reached for her emergency kit. 22 years of tornado country had taught her to keep supplies in the cellar. Bandages, antiseptic, a splint made from wooden slats and medical tape. She worked quickly, cleaning the wound, applying antibiotic ointment, wrapping the arm tight enough to immobilize it but not tight enough to cut off circulation. You will need surgery, she said when she finished, but you will keep the arm. Do not move it. Do not use it. And get to a hospital as soon as the storm passes. Garrett nodded weakly. The wallet fell from his teeth. His head lolled back against the concrete wall as shock and exhaustion pulled him toward unconsciousness. Someone watch him, Eleanor ordered. If he stops responding, you yell for me. She moved to the young biker who was hyperventilating in the corner, the one who could not have been more than 22. Up close, she could see the terror in his eyes, the rapid rise and fall of his chest, the trembling in his hands. Name, she said softly. Tyler Brennan. Okay, Tyler, I need you to look at me. Not the ceiling, not the walls. Me. His eyes found hers, wide, panicked, lost. Breathe with me. Eleanor took his hand and placed it on her chest over her heart. Feel that. Feel how slow and steady that is. Match it. In through your nose, out through your mouth. I cannot. I am going to die. We are all going to die. No, we are not. We are going to sit here together, you and me, and we are going to breathe. And when that tornado passes, we are going to walk out of this cellar and see the sun. Do you believe me? Tyler shook his head. That is okay. Eleanor squeezed his hand. You do not have to believe me. You just have to breathe. Can you do that? Can you breathe with me? Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Tyler's breathing began to even out. His grip on Eleanor's hand tightened, then relaxed. The wild terror in his eyes faded to something more manageable. Still afraid, but no longer drowning in it. Thank you, he whispered. That is what we do. Eleanor patted his shoulder and stood up. We take care of each other. She moved through the cellar, blankets for the ones who were shaking, water for the ones who needed it, words for the ones who were falling apart. 79 men, and not one of them questioned her authority. Not one of them challenged her commands. In this concrete box beneath the earth, with death roaring overhead, Eleanor Morrison was in charge. Jax watched her from across the cellar. She could feel his eyes following her as she worked, calculating, assessing, seeing something that surprised him. You have done this before. It was not a question. Survived a tornado, Eleanor sat down on an overturned crate, her back against the cold concrete wall. or taking care of people who are scared out of their minds? Both. 35 years in the ER. She accepted the bottle of water someone handed her. You see enough trauma, you learn how to stay calm when everything is falling apart. Panic kills more people than the injuries themselves. My job was always to be the calm in the storm. Jax was quiet for a moment. Above them, the tornado continued its assault. The cellar doors buckled inward with each gust, straining against hinges that were never designed for this kind of abuse. Why did you quit? My husband died. Eleanor's voice was flat. No emotion, just facts. Medical bills took everything. I could not afford to live in town anymore. Could not afford to keep working either. Not with the commute and the gas prices and the cost of just existing. So I moved out here, took the only thing I had left. She gestured at the cellar walls surrounding them. This place. Jax nodded slowly. He had questions. She could see them forming behind those cold blue eyes. But he kept them to himself, respecting her privacy in a way she had not expected from a man who led an outlaw motorcycle gang. Can I ask you something, he said instead. You just did. He almost smiled. Almost. Why did you help us? The truth. Eleanor stared at the concrete floor. She could feel the vibrations through her bones. The tornado was directly overhead now. Maximum danger, maximum destruction. If these walls were going to fail, they would fail in the next 60 seconds. Because I watched my husband die trying to save me. The words came out quiet, barely audible over the roaring wind. But Jax heard them. His expression did not change, but something shifted in his posture. A softening, a recognition of shared pain. He threw me in this cellar, Eleanor continued, pushed me down those stairs and turned back to close the doors. The tornado took him before he could get down the steps. I spent 22 years asking myself what I could have done differently. 22 years of regret eating me alive. She looked at Jax. Those cold blue eyes did not seem so cold anymore. Tonight I saw you and your men out there, struggling, dying, and I thought, I have a cellar. I can save them. If I lock my door and hide, if I let 79 men die when I could have helped, I become the person who let fear win. I become the person Thomas died protecting. Most people would have locked that door, Jack said quietly. I am not most people. No. His voice was soft now, almost gentle. You are not. The silence came like a switch being flipped. One moment the world was ending. The next, nothing. No wind, no roar, no shaking walls or buckling doors. Just the sound of 79 men breathing in the dark. Eleanor stood up slowly. Her joints ached. Her muscles screamed. She was 67 years old and she had just sprinted across a muddy field and treated a compound fracture and talked a panicking young man through what might have been his first brush with mortality. She was exhausted, but the tornado had passed. Stay here, she said to no one in particular. I will check outside. Like hell, Jax rose to join her. We go together. They climbed the stairs together. Jax put his shoulder to the doors and pushed. They groaned, resisted. 22 years of rust and warped wood fought against his strength. Then they gave way. Dawn was breaking. Eleanor stepped out of the cellar and felt her heart stop. Her farmhouse was gone. Not damaged, not destroyed, erased. The foundation was there, covered in debris. But the walls, the roof, the furniture, the memories. 40 years of her life had been reduced to scattered wreckage spread across what used to be her front yard. She could not move, could not breathe, could not process what she was seeing. The barn was half collapsed. The fence that had marked the property line for 3 generations was simply gone. The oak tree where Thomas had proposed to her 50 years ago was snapped in half, its ancient trunk splintered like a broken bone. Everything she had was gone. Everything except the cellar. Everything except the land itself. Her legs gave out. Jax caught her before she hit the ground. His arms were strong, steadying her with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man his size. Easy, I have got you, my house. Her voice cracked, broke, shattered like the windows that no longer existed. Everything I own, everything I have, gone. She pulled away from him, stumbled toward the wreckage. Her boots crunched on broken glass, splintered wood, shattered memories. There, a photograph, water damaged but visible, bent but not destroyed. She fell to her knees and picked it up with trembling hands. Thomas and Marcus, 30 years ago, her husband with his arm around their son, both of them smiling at the camera, both of them alive, both of them looking at her with love in their eyes. My son. She clutched the photograph to her chest. This is all I have left of my son. Jax approached slowly. His boots made no sound on the debris-covered ground, but Eleanor could feel him behind her. A presence, a witness to her grief. What happened to him? Afghanistan, 20 years ago. IED, I am sorry, he was a good boy. Eleanor traced Marcus's face with her finger. Handsome, smiling, frozen forever at 25 years old. All he ever wanted to do was protect people. That is why he enlisted. That is why he... She stopped because Jax was staring at the photograph. His face had gone pale. What? Eleanor asked. Nothing. Do not lie to me. What is it? Jax's jaw tightened. He looked away, looked back at the photograph, looked at Eleanor's face, searching for something she did not understand. It is nothing, he said. He looks familiar, that is all. Familiar? How? I do not know. Forget it. But Eleanor saw something in his eyes. Recognition. Shock. Something he was trying very hard to hide. You knew him, she said. Jax flinched. You knew my son. The denial was already forming on his lips. She could see it, could see him preparing to lie, to deflect, to protect whatever secret he was keeping. But he did not. He stood there, rain-soaked and wind-battered, surrounded by the ruins of her life, and he told her the truth. I cannot be sure, he said slowly. I need to make some calls. I need to verify some things before I say anything. Verify what? Sure of what? Jax met her eyes, and for the first time, those cold blue eyes held something warm, something almost like compassion. Eleanor, if I am right about this, you deserve to hear the full story. Not pieces, not guesses, the truth. Complete and verified. What truth? What are you talking about? He did not answer. What truth, Jax? Give me 5 days. His voice was firm, not unkind, but not yielding either. I need to make some calls, talk to some people, find out if what I think I know is actually what happened. What do you think you know? 5 days, Eleanor. That is all I am asking. 5 days and I will come back. I will tell you everything. Why cannot you tell me now? Because if I am right, it changes everything. Jax's voice dropped. And you have already lost enough today. You deserve to hear this properly. Eleanor wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, wanted to grab this man by his leather vest and shake the truth out of him. But she was tired. So tired. Her house was gone. Her possessions were scattered across 60 acres of Oklahoma farmland. Her body ached. Her heart ached. And now this stranger, this Hell's Angel she had saved from a tornado, was telling her there was something about her dead son she did not know. It was too much. 5 days, she said finally. 5 days, Jax confirmed. Then I will be back and I will tell you everything. He reached into his vest and pulled out a card. Just a phone number. No name, no address. If you need anything before then, he said, anything at all, you call this number. Eleanor took the card. Her fingers brushed against his and she felt calluses, scars, the hands of a man who had worked hard and fought harder. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because you saved 79 of my brothers tonight, Jax said simply, and because maybe I owe you more than that. He did not explain what he meant. He just turned and walked back toward the cellar where 78 men were beginning to emerge into the gray light of morning. They looked around at the destruction, at the missing farmhouse, at the scattered debris and the broken trees and the old woman kneeling in the mud with a photograph clutched to her chest. Mount up, Jax called out. Those whose bikes survived, double up the rest. We are heading out. The bikers moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, they had retrieved their motorcycles from the driveway. Some were damaged, but most had survived the tornado's passage. The machines roared to life one by one, engines splitting the morning silence. Jax was the last to leave. He mounted his bike, a massive black Harley that gleamed even through the mud and rain. He looked back at Eleanor, still kneeling in the ruins of her home. 5 days, he said. Then he kicked the bike to life and led 78 Hell's Angels down Route 44, away from the destruction, away from the woman who had saved their lives. Eleanor watched until they disappeared over the horizon. Then she looked down at the photograph in her hands. Thomas and Marcus, her husband and her son, both dead, both gone. What did you not tell me, baby? She whispered to Marcus's smiling face. What secrets did you take to your grave? The photograph did not answer, but somewhere in her gut, Eleanor knew whatever was coming would change everything she thought she knew about her son, everything she thought she knew about his death, everything she thought she knew about the last 20 years of her life. 5 days. 5 days until the truth arrived. She had no idea how right she was. The first day passed in a haze. Eleanor wandered through the debris of her farmhouse, picking up fragments, setting them down, picking them up again. A broken picture frame, a water-stained Bible, the handle of Thomas's favorite coffee mug, 40 years of memories reduced to rubble. She found her wedding dress, or what was left of it. The white fabric was torn and muddy, wrapped around a fence post 100 yards from where the closet used to be. She pulled it free and held it against her chest. She could still remember the way Thomas's eyes had lit up when he saw her walking down the aisle, the way his voice had cracked when he said his vows. Till death do us part. Death had parted them 22 years ago. And now the tornado had taken even the dress. She slept in her car that night. The back seat was cramped. Her neck kinked at a painful angle. The vinyl seats stuck to her skin every time she moved. But she could not leave. This land was all she had left. The second day brought her neighbor. Earl Morrison drove over in his pickup truck at 7 in the morning. He was 73 years old, skin weathered by decades of Oklahoma sun, hands gnarled from a lifetime of farming. "Eleanor, you cannot stay out here. I am fine. You are sleeping in a car." "I said I am fine, Earl." He looked at the destruction around them. The foundation where her house used to be, the half-collapsed barn, the scattered debris that used to be her life. "Come stay with me and Linda," he said. "We have got a spare room. Hot meals, real beds." "No, Eleanor, I am not leaving this land." Her voice cracked. "Thomas is buried here. Marcus's memorial is here. I am not leaving." Earl stared at her for a long moment. She could see the arguments forming in his mind. Could see him calculating the right combination of words that might convince her to be reasonable. But Earl Morrison had known Eleanor Morrison for 40 years. He knew that look in her eyes, the set of her jaw, the steel in her spine. "At least let me bring you a tent," he said finally. "Some supplies. You cannot keep sleeping in that car." Eleanor nodded. She did not have the energy to argue. Earl came back 2 hours later with a camping tent, a cooler full of food, and a portable generator. He helped her set up in the clearing beside the ruined barn, working in silence, asking no questions about the Hells Angels or the cellar or why 79 motorcycles had been parked in her driveway when the tornado hit. That was Earl's way. He helped. He did not pry. "Thank you," Eleanor said when he finished. "You are stubborn as hell. You know that. That is how I have survived this long." Earl drove away. Eleanor sat in front of her tent and watched the sun set over the destruction. Orange and pink and purple. Beautiful colors painting a ruined landscape. What did Jax know about Marcus? The question had been eating at her for 2 days. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jax's face when he looked at that photograph. The recognition, the shock, the lie. He knew something. Something big enough that he needed 5 days to verify it. What could possibly need verification? Marcus died 20 years ago. There was a funeral, a flag, a letter from his commanding officer. Eleanor had the documents somewhere in the rubble. She had the medals. She had the folded flag in a display case that was now buried under what used to be her living room. What was there to verify? The third day brought the vultures. A sleek black car pulled up to the edge of her property at 10 in the morning. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, looked around with barely concealed disgust, and walked toward Eleanor like he owned the place. It was Morrison. Eleanor set down the piece of broken china she had been examining. It was part of her grandmother's tea set, one of the few family heirlooms that had survived 4 generations. The tornado had destroyed it in 4 seconds. "That is me. I am Gerald Hutchins, Creek County Development Association." He extended a hand, soft palm, manicured nails. The hands of a man who had never worked a day in his life. Eleanor did not take it. "I wanted to speak with you about your property," Hutchins continued, seemingly unbothered by the snub. "As you may know, there has been significant interest in developing this area. The tornado damage has accelerated those plans." "Developing how? Residential communities, shopping centers, the usual." Hutchins smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Your 60 acres are in a prime location, Mrs. Morrison. I would like to make you an offer. I am not selling. You have not heard the offer yet." "I do not need to." Eleanor's voice was flat. "This land belonged to my father. It belonged to my husband. My son's memorial is here. My husband is buried here. I am not selling." Hutchins' smile flickered. "Mrs. Morrison, I understand the sentimental attachment, but surely you can see that rebuilding on this property is impractical. You are 67 years old. You have no income, no insurance, no family to help you." Eleanor stood up slowly. Her joints ached. Her muscles screamed. But she drew herself up to her full height, all 5 foot 4 inches of her, and met Hutchins' eyes with a stare that had made doctors and surgeons and hospital administrators back down for 35 years. "Mr. Hutchins," she said quietly, "I have survived 3 tornadoes. I have buried a husband and a son. I have spent the last 22 years alone on this land, working it with my own 2 hands. You think because my house is gone, I'm going to sell everything I have ever known to some developer who wants to put up a shopping center? I am offering you a way out. I do not need a way out. I need you to get off my property." Hutchins' expression hardened. "You are making a mistake, Mrs. Morrison. This development is happening whether you sell or not. Soon you will be surrounded by construction. Your peaceful little farm will be worthless. Then I will sell it for worthless money." Eleanor pointed toward his car. "Now get out before I find my shotgun." Hutchins stood his ground for another moment. Then he turned and walked back to his car. His Italian leather shoes squelched in the mud. His expensive suit was splattered with Oklahoma dirt. "You will regret this," he called over his shoulder. Eleanor watched him drive away. She would not regret it. This land was all she had left, and nobody was taking it from her. The 4th day brought the phone call. Unknown number. Oklahoma area code. Eleanor's heart jumped as she answered. "Hello, Eleanor. It is Jax." She gripped the phone so hard her knuckles went white. "What did you find?" A pause. "I need to see you in person. Tell me now. This is not a phone conversation." "I do not care. Tell me." Another pause. Longer this time. She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, weighing his options, deciding how much to reveal. "Did Marcus ever mention a club to you?" Eleanor's stomach dropped. "What club? You know what club." "No," her voice was barely a whisper. "I do not." Jax was quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, measured, the voice of a man choosing each word with surgical precision. "Eleanor, I am coming to see you tomorrow. A day early. I am bringing some people with me. People who knew your son. Knew him? Knew him how? That is what I need to explain in person. Just tomorrow, Eleanor, I promise. You will understand everything tomorrow." The line went dead. Eleanor stared at her phone. People who knew Marcus. Marcus had been in the army. He deployed to Afghanistan 3 times. He died on his 3rd deployment, killed by an IED outside Kandahar. What did that have to do with Hell's Angels? Eleanor did not sleep that night. She sat in her camping chair, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars wheel overhead. Her mind raced through every memory she had of her son. Marcus had been a good kid, quiet, thoughtful, a little wild in high school, sure. Got into a few fights, skipped class sometimes, but nothing serious, nothing that suggested he was hiding something. He had straightened out after graduation, got a job at the auto shop in town, started talking about college, about the future, about making something of himself. Then at 21, he had enlisted. Eleanor remembered the day he told her. They were sitting on the porch of the old farmhouse, the one that no longer existed, watching the sunset. "I need to do something that matters, Mom. You matter right here." "I know, but there is a whole world out there, people who need help. I cannot just sit here and pretend that is not true." He had shipped out 3 months later. For the next 4 years, Eleanor had lived for his letters, his phone calls, the brief visits home between deployments. Marcus in his uniform, looking so handsome, so grown up, so different from the boy who used to catch fireflies in mason jars on summer evenings. Then the officers came to her door. She had known before they spoke. She had known the moment she saw the dress uniforms, the folded flag, the chaplain with his Bible. "Mrs. Morrison, we regret to inform you." She had stopped listening after that. The funeral was a blur. The memorial service, the 21-gun salute, the flag they pressed into her hands on behalf of a grateful nation. Marcus was gone. And now, 20 years later, a man named Jax was telling her there was more to the story. What more could there be? The 5th day dawned gray and cold. Eleanor was still in her camping chair, still wrapped in her blanket, still staring at the horizon when she heard them. Motorcycles, not a few, not dozens, hundreds. The sound built slowly, a distant rumble that grew into a roar. The ground beneath her feet began to vibrate. The air itself seemed to tremble. Eleanor stood up slowly. Her joints screamed. Her back ached. But she walked to the edge of her property and looked down the road and stopped breathing. The road was full of motorcycles as far as she could see in both directions. Black leather and chrome stretching from horizon to horizon. A river of machines and men flowing toward her ruined farm. Jax was at the front. Behind him, a sea of riders stretched into the distance. One by one, they pulled onto her property. They parked in the fields, on the grass. Anywhere they could find space. Eleanor counted. 50, 100, 200. They kept coming. Jax dismounted and walked toward her. His face was serious, almost reverent, like a man approaching sacred ground. Eleanor. His voice was thick. How many? Jack stopped in front of her. The morning light caught the patches on his vest. The death's head. The words that identified him as president of the Oklahoma chapter. 312, he said. From 18 chapters across the country. Why? Her voice was barely audible. Why are they here? Jax met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw something in his gaze that looked almost like tears. Because we owe you a debt, he said, and it is time to pay it. What debt? I do not understand. What is happening? Jax turned and whistled. Two older bikers separated from the crowd and walked toward them. One was in his 60s, white beard, a limp in his left leg. The other was younger, maybe 50, with a scar running down his left cheek. This is Father Mike Sullivan, Jax said, indicating the older man. We call him Reverend. He used to be a preacher, believe it or not. And this is Vincent Rodriguez. They call him Ace. Jax paused. They served with Marcus. Eleanor's legs went weak. Served with him? Served where? Father Mike stepped forward. His eyes were kind but sad, the eyes of a man who had seen too much death and made too many condolence calls. In the club, ma'am, not in the army. Eleanor shook her head. No, that is not possible. I would have known. He did not want you to know. Ace's voice was rough, gravelly, the voice of a man who had screamed too many times and smoked too many cigarettes. He knew you would not approve. He kept that part of his life separate. Eleanor stumbled backward. Her chest was tight. She could not breathe. My son was a soldier, a hero. He was not. He did not. He did. Father Mike's voice was gentle but firm, and he did it because he believed in what we stand for. Brotherhood, loyalty, protecting the people we love. I do not believe you. Father Mike reached into his vest and pulled out a photograph. Worn, faded, but clear enough. Look at this. Eleanor's hands were shaking as she took it. The photo showed a group of bikers standing in front of a row of motorcycles, laughing, arms around each other. Brothers. And in the center, grinning at the camera, was Marcus. Her Marcus. He was wearing a leather vest. On the back, clear as day, was the Hells Angels' death's head. Eleanor's knees buckled. Jax caught her before she hit the ground. Easy, I have got you. But Eleanor barely heard him. She was staring at the photograph, at her son's face, at the secret he had kept from her for 20 years, at the life she never knew he lived. And for the first time since the tornado, she started to cry. 312 bikers stood in silence as Eleanor Morrison wept. Not one of them moved. Not one of them spoke. They just stood there, surrounding her like an army of guardian angels, bearing witness to a mother's grief. When Eleanor finally found her voice, it came out broken, fractured. How long? How long was he one of you? Father Mike glanced at Ace, then back at Eleanor. Marcus joined us in 2001. He was 20 years old. Road name was Guardian. Guardian. Eleanor tasted the word. It felt foreign on her tongue, wrong, like calling a stranger by her son's name. He earned it, Ace said. The scarred man had been standing at the edge of the group, watching with eyes that held old pain. Your son had a gift for protecting people. The weak, the lost, the ones nobody else gave a damn about. He would find them and take care of them. Like a guardian, Jax added quietly. Eleanor shook her head. This does not make sense. Marcus was in college in 2001. He was studying business. He was going to take over the farm. He dropped out. Father Mike's voice was gentle but firm. Second semester of his sophomore year. He never told you. The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. She remembered that year. Marcus had seemed distant, distracted. She had asked him about school and he had given vague answers. Doing fine, Mom. Nothing to worry about. She had believed him. She had believed every lie he ever told her. Why? Eleanor looked up at the three men surrounding her. Why would he keep this from me? Jax exchanged a look with Father Mike and Ace. Something passed between them. A silent conversation. A decision being made. Because we saved his life, Jax said finally. Eleanor went still. Marcus was in trouble in 2000, Father Mike explained. He sat down on a crate someone had brought over. Bad trouble. He had fallen in with a group at college, started gambling, got into debt with the wrong people. What kind of people? The kind who break legs when you cannot pay, Ace said flatly. the kind who do not stop at legs. Eleanor's heart clenched. She remembered visiting Marcus that Christmas. He had seemed nervous, jumpy. He had flinched when there was a knock at the door. She had asked if everything was okay, and he had smiled that familiar smile and said everything was fine. Everything had not been fine. They were going to kill him, Jack said. A local crew, loan sharks with connections to organized crime. Marcus owed them $40,000 and he had no way to pay. 40,000. Eleanor's voice was hollow. How? Poker. Father Mike shook his head. The boy thought he was good at cards. He was not. Lost big a few times trying to win back what he had already lost. Classic spiral. How did you find him? Some of our brothers in the area heard about a kid who was about to get himself killed. Jax's jaw tightened. We looked into it. Found out Marcus was Thomas Morrison's son. Eleanor's breath caught. You knew Thomas? Knew of him. Jax met her eyes. Your husband had a reputation in certain circles. Helped some of our brothers back in the 80s. Never joined the club, but he did right by us when it mattered. Thomas had never mentioned anything about Hell's Angels. But then again, Thomas had kept his own secrets. Eleanor was beginning to realize that the men in her life had hidden entire worlds from her. We gave Marcus a choice, Father Mike continued. Pay off his debt by working for the people who wanted to hurt him. Become their errand boy, their punching bag, their property. Or join us. Let us handle the debt. Let us protect him. You paid off $40,000 for a stranger? He was not a stranger. Jax's voice was firm. He was Thomas Morrison's son, and besides, we did not exactly pay the debt. Eleanor looked at him sharply. What does that mean? It means those loan sharks suddenly decided Oklahoma was not a healthy place to do business. Ace almost smiled. It means they forgave all outstanding debts and relocated to a different state. Eleanor did not ask for details. She did not want to know. So Marcus joined because you saved him, she said slowly. Because he owed you. At first, Father Mike nodded. But that is not why he stayed. He stayed because he found something he had been looking for his whole life. What? A purpose. Father Mike's eyes were distant, lost in memories from 2 decades past. Brotherhood, a place where he belonged. Marcus was not like most of the young men who come to us looking for excitement or trouble. He came looking for meaning. He found it. Ace added, in the club, in the work we do, in protecting people who cannot protect themselves. Eleanor stared at the photograph again, at her son surrounded by men in leather vests, at the smile on his face that she now recognized as genuine happiness. Why did he not tell me? The question hung in the air. The real question, the one that mattered more than all the others. Father Mike sighed. He was afraid you would be disappointed in him, afraid you would see him differently, love him less. That is ridiculous. Eleanor's voice cracked. I could never love him less. He was my son. He knew that. Jax put his hand on her shoulder. In his head, he knew. But in his heart, he was terrified of losing you. So he kept the 2 parts of his life separate, his family and his brotherhood. Eleanor wiped her eyes. 20 years. 20 years I thought I knew my son. 20 years I grieved for the boy I raised. And this whole time there was this whole other person I never met. You did meet him, Father Mike said gently. The Marcus you knew was real. The kindness, the courage, the way he always wanted to protect people. That was him. The club did not change who he was. It just gave him a place to be who he was. A commotion near the road interrupted them. More bikers were arriving. Trucks, too, loaded with lumber and tools and construction equipment. Men in leather vests were unloading materials, shouting instructions, organizing themselves with military precision. What is happening? Eleanor asked. Jack stood up and offered her his hand. Come see. He led her through the crowd of bikers toward what used to be her farmhouse. The foundation was still there, cleared now of debris. Men were measuring, marking, preparing. What is this? This is us keeping a promise. Jax's voice was thick. Marcus made us swear something before he deployed that last time. Made us promise that if anything happened to him, we would take care of you. Eleanor's heart stopped. What? Father Mike appeared beside them, holding an envelope. Old, yellowed, water-stained. Marcus knew he might not come home from that deployment, Father Mike said. So he came to our chapter president, a man we called Hawk, made him swear on his life that the club would protect you, take care of you, make sure you never struggled alone. He reached out and pressed the envelope into Eleanor's hands. This belongs to you. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she opened it. The paper was fragile, threatening to fall apart at her touch. Inside was a single sheet covered in handwriting she would recognize anywhere. Marcus's handwriting. The messy scrawl, The letters that leaned too far to the right, the way he always pressed too hard with his pen, leaving grooves in the paper. Mom, she read, if you are reading this, I did not make it home. Her vision blurred with tears. She blinked them away and kept reading. I need you to know something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I am a Hell's Angel. I know that probably shocks you. I know you have heard things about the club. Bad things. Some of them are true, but not all of them. And the brothers I ride with are the best men I have ever known. They saved my life, Mom. When I was 20 and stupid and about to get myself killed, they stepped in. They gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to keep going. Eleanor had to stop, had to breathe, had to remember how to make her lungs work. I joined the army because I wanted to protect people, because I wanted to serve something bigger than myself. But I learned how to do that from my brothers first. They taught me what it means to have someone's back, what it means to put your life on the line for the people you love. She wiped her eyes and kept reading. Here is the important part. I made them promise that if anything happens to me, they will take care of you. I do not care if it is next year or 20 years from now. If you ever need help, they will be there. You are not just my mother, Mom. You are their mother, too. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. I love you. I have always loved you. I am sorry I kept this secret. I was afraid you would be disappointed in me. I hope you can forgive me. Take care of yourself, and let the boys take care of you, too. That is all I have ever wanted. Your son, Marcus. Postscript. Road name Guardian. Ask Reverend about it. He will tell you the story. Eleanor read the letter 3 times. Then she collapsed against Jax's chest and sobbed. 20 years. 20 years of loneliness. 20 years of struggling alone on this farm. 20 years of counting every dollar and every day and every hour without another human voice. And all that time, Marcus had tried to protect her. All that time, there had been a family waiting for her. If only she had known. Jax held her while she cried. He did not say anything, did not need to. Around them, 300 bikers stood in silence. Some had tears in their own eyes. Some had their heads bowed. Some were working, unloading trucks, measuring lumber. But even they moved quietly, reverently, as if they understood the sacred weight of this moment. He loved you more than anything, Father Mike said softly. Every time he came back from a run, first thing he would do was call you, make sure you were okay. He used to say you were the strongest woman he ever knew. Eleanor pulled back from Jax, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Why did I not get this letter before? Why did no one come? Because Hawk died. Jax's voice was heavy with old grief. 3 months after Marcus, motorcycle accident on Highway 44, the letter got lost in the chaos. Different presidents, different priorities. Nobody knew where you were. And then you saved 79 of my brothers from a tornado. Jax's eyes held hers. When the news coverage hit, one of our archivists recognized your name. Morrison, Thomas Morrison's widow, Marcus Guardian Morrison's mother. He dug through 20 years of records and found the letter. Eleanor shook her head slowly. All because I opened my cellar. All because you opened your heart. Father Mike put his hand over hers. Marcus always said you were the most generous person he knew. Said you would give the shirt off your back to a stranger if they needed it. He was right. Ace added, we saw it ourselves. 79 strangers in your driveway, and you did not hesitate. Eleanor looked around at the organized chaos surrounding her. Men were framing walls now. Others were mixing concrete. The skeleton of a house was beginning to take shape on the foundation where her old home had stood. What happens now? She asked. Now we keep the promise. Jax's voice was firm. Now we build you a new house. Now we take care of you the way Marcus wanted. I cannot ask you to do that. You are not asking. Jax met her eyes. Marcus asked, 20 years ago. We are just 20 years late in answering. The construction continued all day. Eleanor tried to help, but the men would not let her. Your job is to rest, a young biker told her. Our job is to build. So she watched, and she listened. Different bikers approached her throughout the day, introducing themselves, shaking her hand, telling her stories about Marcus. Guardian talked me off a ledge once, a man named Rusty said. Literally, I was on an overpass at 3 in the morning, ready to end it all. He found me, sat with me until sunrise. Never told a soul. Your son was the first person who welcomed me when I prospected, another man said. His name was Bones. Treated me like a brother from day one. Most guys make you earn respect. Marcus just gave it. Guardian is the reason I got clean, a third man told her. His eyes were wet. He said I was worth more than the needle. First person who ever believed that. Story after story, memory after memory, a picture of her son she had never known. The Marcus she remembered was good, kind, loyal. The Marcus they described was all of that and more. He was a hero, not just in the army, not just in death, but in life, in the small moments, in the quiet acts of courage that nobody saw. Eleanor wished she had known. She wished he had trusted her enough to tell her. But she understood why he had not. Understood the fear of disappointing the people you love, the fear of being judged, the fear of losing the one person whose opinion mattered most. Marcus had kept his secret to protect her. And in the end, it was that secret that brought her a new family. Around noon, Gerald Hutchins returned. His black car pulled up to the edge of the property, and Eleanor felt her spine stiffen. She watched him step out, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the leather vests and work clothes surrounding her. This time she was not alone. Jax materialized beside her before Hutchins had taken 3 steps. Ace appeared on her other side. Father Mike moved to block the path forward. Mrs. Morrison, Hutchins' voice was strained. I see you have company. I see you cannot take no for an answer. I came to talk business. The lady already gave you her answer, Jack said. His voice was calm, friendly even, but something in his tone made Hutchins stop walking. This is a private conversation. Then you should not have it in public. Jack stepped forward. 1 step. That was all. But suddenly the space between them seemed smaller, more dangerous. Every biker within earshot had stopped working. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward the confrontation. Hutchins' face paled slightly. Look, I do not want any trouble. Then leave. I have a legal right to make an offer on this property, and she has a legal right to refuse. Jax tilted his head, which she has done twice now. Hutchins tried to look past Jax to Eleanor. Mrs. Morrison, please be reasonable. You are 67 years old. You have no house, no income, no family. She has family. Jax's voice dropped. 300 of us. Every chapter. Every state. You want to make her life difficult? You are making a lot of men very angry. Is that a threat? It is information. Hutchins stood his ground for another moment. Then Ace cracked his knuckles. Not aggressively, just casually, like he was stretching after a long ride. It was enough. This is not over, Hutchins said, backing toward his car. You cannot intimidate me. I have resources. So do we. Jax did not blink. Drive safe, Mr. Hutchins. The black car sped away, spraying gravel. Eleanor let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. That man has been circling this property for years, she said. The tornado probably seemed like a gift to him. He will be back, Jax agreed. Developers do not give up easy. What do I do? You do not do anything. Jax turned to face her. We handle it. I cannot ask you to fight my battles. You did not ask. He almost smiled. But we are fighting them anyway. That evening, Eleanor found herself sitting by a fire pit someone had constructed from salvaged stones. The construction had paused for the day. The framing was done. The skeleton of her new house stood against the darkening sky, bones of wood waiting to become a home. Bikers gathered around other fires scattered across the property. The smell of cooking meat drifted through the air. Laughter echoed in the darkness. For the first time in 20 years, Eleanor's land sounded alive. Ace sat down beside her without asking permission. He handed her a bottle of water and settled into the camp chair, like a man with something heavy on his mind. Can I tell you something, he asked. You have been telling me things all day. One more will not hurt. This one might. Eleanor looked at him sharply. His scarred face was half hidden in shadow, but she could see his eyes. They were haunted. I served with Marcus, Ace said. Not just in the club, in the army. You were in Afghanistan together. Same unit. Different squads, but we deployed together. Looked out for each other over there just like we looked out for each other here. He paused, took a long drink of water. His hands were trembling slightly. The day he died, I was there. Eleanor's heart clenched. I was 2 vehicles behind him in the convoy. We were running supplies from FOB Cobra to a village about 20 clicks north. Routine mission. We had done it a dozen times. What happened? Ace was quiet for a long moment. We hit a choke point, narrow road, hills on both sides, perfect ambush terrain. I remember thinking we should have taken the longer route. I remember thinking something felt wrong. But you kept going. Orders or orders. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, someone was playing guitar. A slow, sad song that seemed to match the weight of Ace's words. The first RPG hit Marcus's Humvee dead center, blew the engine apart. Vehicle caught fire immediately. Eleanor closed her eyes. He got out. Ace's voice was barely audible. He was hurt. Burns on his arms, I think. But he got out, and instead of taking cover, instead of running to safety, he grabbed his rifle and started moving toward the enemy positions. Why? Because they were focused on him. As long as they were shooting at Marcus, they were not shooting at the rest of us. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. He drew their fire, Ace continued, gave us time to dismount and find cover. Held them off for 4 minutes. Maybe 5. Saved at least 12 lives. How did he... Headshot. Ace met her eyes. Instant. He did not suffer. Eleanor did not know if that made it better or worse. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire burned low. The guitar player finished his song and started another. There is something else, Ace said finally. Eleanor looked at him. The ambush was too perfect, too coordinated. They knew exactly when we would be coming, exactly how many vehicles, exactly where to set up. What are you saying? I am saying someone told them. Ace's jaw tightened. Someone in our unit leaked the information. Eleanor went cold. After the attack, I started asking questions, poking around, talking to people who might know something. Did you find anything? A name? Ace's voice dropped to a whisper. Raymond Clayton, sergeant. He was in charge of logistics, knew all the convoy schedules, all the routes. Why would he do it? Money. Clayton was dirty, had been for years, selling equipment to contractors, skimming supplies, running side deals with anyone who would pay. Marcus found out, started collecting evidence. Eleanor's hands clenched into fists. Marcus confronted him about a month before the ambush, told Clayton he was going to report him. Clayton laughed, said nobody would believe some junior soldier over a sergeant with 15 years in. But Marcus did not back down. Marcus never backed down from anything. Ace shook his head. That is what got him killed. You are saying Clayton sold out my son, had him murdered. I am saying I believe that with every fiber of my being. But I could not prove it. Took my suspicions to command. They said there was not enough evidence. Case went cold. Eleanor stared into the fire. Her mind was spinning. For 20 years, she had believed her son died in a random attack, a tragic casualty of war. Senseless, but unavoidable. Now she was learning it was not random at all. Someone had murdered her boy and gotten away with it. Where is Clayton now? Gone. Ace's voice was bitter. Discharged 6 months after Marcus died. Changed his name. Disappeared. You have been looking for him off and on for 20 years. Never could find him. Eleanor looked at Ace, at the scars on his face, at the haunted look in his eyes, at the guilt that had been eating at him for 2 decades. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For trying, for caring, for not forgetting. Ace's eyes glistened. Marcus was my brother, in the club and in the war. I owed him that much. You do not owe him anything anymore. Eleanor reached out and took his hand. You tried to get him justice. That is more than most people would do. Ace squeezed her hand once, then let go. He stood up, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I should get some sleep, he said. Long day tomorrow. Ace, he turned back. If there was a way to find Clayton, a way to prove what he did, would you help me? Ace studied her face for a long moment. In a heartbeat, he walked away into the darkness. Eleanor sat alone by the dying fire, thinking about her son, thinking about the man who killed him, thinking about justice. 20 years was a long time, but it was not too long. Later that night, Jax found her still sitting by the embers. You should sleep, he said. Cannot. Too much in my head. He sat down beside her. The camp was quiet now. Most of the bikers had retreated to their tents or their bedrolls. The half-built house stood silent against the stars. Ace told you, Jax said. It was not a question. About the ambush. About Clayton. Yes, Jax nodded slowly. We have been trying to find that bastard for 20 years. Ace said he changed his name. He did. Jax pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. But we have resources he does not know about. Contacts in places you would not expect. Eleanor's heart began to beat faster. Raymond Clayton became Richard Turner about 6 months after he left the Army. Moved around for a few years. Florida, Texas, Arizona. Then he settled in Henderson, Nevada. Nevada, just outside Vegas. Jax looked at her. Works at an auto dealership, married, 2 kids, nice house in a nice neighborhood, living the American dream. While my son rots in the ground. Jax was quiet. I want to find him, Eleanor said. Her voice was steel. I want to look him in the eye. I want him to know that I know. I want to see if there is any guilt in him at all, any remorse, anything human. And if there is not, then at least I will know. She turned to face him. Marcus deserved better than this, better than being murdered and forgotten, better than having his killer walk free for 20 years. This could be dangerous, Jack said carefully. Clayton is not going to welcome visitors asking questions about his past. I do not care. I do. I am not going to put you in harm's way. Then come with me, Eleanor's voice hardened. Bring your brothers. Make sure I am safe. But I am going to Nevada, Jax, with or without you. Jack studied her face for a long moment. The firelight played across her features, illuminating the determination in her eyes, the set of her jaw, the steel in her spine. You are serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. He let out a long breath. We finish the house first. Another week. Maybe less. Get you settled. Make sure everything is in order. And then we ride to Nevada. Jax's voice was hard. We find Clayton and we get you the answers you deserve. Eleanor felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been wound tight for 20 years. Thank you, she said. Do not thank me yet. Jack stood up. This might not end the way you want. We might not find proof. Clayton might deny everything. You might have to walk away with nothing but questions. I have had nothing but questions for 20 years. Eleanor stood up beside him. At least now I will be asking them to the right person. Jax nodded slowly. Get some rest, Eleanor. We have got a lot of work to do. He walked away into the darkness. Eleanor stood alone, watching the last embers die. Marcus had been murdered. Raymond Clayton had killed him. And in 1 week, maybe less, she was going to look that man in the eye and demand the truth. She did not know what would happen after that. She did not care. All she knew was that her son deserved justice, and she was going to get it for him, no matter what it cost. The Nevada desert stretched out before them like a sea of brown and gold, shimmering under the afternoon sun. Eleanor had never been to this part of the country, had never seen landscapes so flat, so empty, so utterly different from the rolling green hills of Oklahoma. But she was not here for the scenery. She was here for Raymond Clayton. 20 motorcycles rumbled down the highway toward Henderson. Jax led the formation with Eleanor riding behind him, her arms wrapped around his waist. The USB drive tucked safely in her jacket pocket. Father Mike and Ace flanked them. Behind came 16 other brothers, men who had volunteered for this mission without hesitation. They had left Oklahoma 3 days ago. 3 days of riding through Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. 3 days of cheap motels and truck stop diners and endless miles of asphalt. 3 days for Eleanor to think about what she was going to say to the man who murdered her son. She still did not know. Some things could not be planned. Henderson appeared on the horizon around 4 in the afternoon. A sprawl of suburban houses and strip malls clustered at the edge of Las Vegas like barnacles on a ship. Clean streets, manicured lawns. The kind of neighborhood where nothing bad ever happened. Except a murderer lived here. They pulled into a gas station on the outskirts of town. Jax killed his engine and helped Eleanor off the bike. How are you feeling? He asked. Eleanor stretched her aching back. She was 67 years old. She had just spent 3 days on the back of a motorcycle. Every joint in her body screamed in protest. Ready, she said. Jax nodded. He pulled out his phone and checked something on the screen. 2847 Desert Rose Lane. About 10 minutes from here. Eleanor's heart hammered in her chest. 10 minutes. 10 minutes until she faced the man who had destroyed her world. Jax gathered the group around him. 20 men in leather vests standing in a gas station parking lot, drawing nervous glances from the customers filling their tanks. Here is how this goes. We stay calm, we stay controlled. No matter what Clayton says or does, we do not give him any excuse to call the cops and play victim. What if he runs? Ace asked. He will not run. Jax's voice was certain. Men like Clayton have too much to lose. He has got a house, a family, a reputation. He is not going to throw all that away by bolting. What if he denies everything? Then Eleanor shows him the evidence. Jax looked at her. After that, it is her call. Eleanor nodded. She understood. This was her mission, her confrontation, her justice to claim or deny. The brothers were here to protect her, but the fight was hers alone. They mounted up again. 20 engines roared to life. 20 motorcycles pulled out of the gas station and headed into the heart of Henderson. Desert Rose Lane was exactly what Eleanor expected. Cookie-cutter houses lined both sides of the street, each one identical to its neighbor, distinguished only by the color of the shutters or the style of the mailbox. Perfectly trimmed hedges, perfectly green lawns, perfectly ordinary people living perfectly ordinary lives. Number 2847 sat in the middle of the block, a beige two-story with brown shutters, a red minivan in the driveway, a basketball hoop mounted above the garage door, wind chimes tinkling on the front porch. The home of a family man, the home of a murderer. Jax pulled to the curb 3 houses down. The other bikes spread out along the street, parking at intervals, creating a perimeter without being obvious about it. Last chance to change your mind, Jack said quietly. Eleanor climbed off the bike. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were trembling. But her voice was steady when she answered. I did not come this far to turn back. She walked toward the house. Father Mike and Ace fell into step beside her. Jax followed a few paces behind. The other brothers stayed with the bikes, watching, waiting. The front door seemed to grow larger with each step Eleanor took. She climbed the porch steps, raised her hand, knocked, footsteps inside. The sound of a television being muted. A woman's voice calling something Eleanor could not quite hear. The door opened, and Eleanor found herself face to face with the man who had killed her son. Raymond Clayton was smaller than she expected. Average height, thinning gray hair, a forgettable face. The kind you would pass on the street without a second glance. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt, holding a can of beer in one hand. He looked like someone's dad. He looked like anyone's neighbor. He did not look like a murderer. Can I help you? His voice was pleasant, polite, not a trace of guilt or recognition. Raymond Clayton. Something flickered in his eyes. Just for a second, a shadow passing across his face. I am sorry, you must have the wrong house. My name is Richard Turner. Your name is Raymond Clayton. Eleanor's voice did not waver. You served in the United States Army from 1989 to 2005. You were stationed at FOB Cobra in Afghanistan from 2003 to 2004. You were a logistics sergeant. Clayton's hand tightened on his beer can. I do not know what you are talking about. You knew my son. Eleanor took a step forward. Marcus Morrison, Specialist Marcus Morrison, road name Guardian. You killed him. The beer can slipped from Clayton's fingers. It hit the porch floor with a hollow clang, foam spilling across the wooden boards. Clayton's face had gone the color of old ash. I do not know anyone by that name. Yes, you do. Eleanor reached into her jacket and pulled out a photograph. Marcus's army portrait, the one they had used at his funeral. She held it up in front of Clayton's face. This was my son. He discovered you were selling equipment, selling information. He was going to report you. This is insane. Clayton's voice rose. I do not know what you are talking about, Sarah. Sarah, call the police. A woman appeared in the doorway behind him. Blonde, mid-40s, worried eyes darting between her husband and the strangers on her porch. Richard, what is going on? Who are these people? It is nothing, honey, just a misunderstanding. Go back inside. It is not a misunderstanding. Eleanor stepped closer to Clayton, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. You sold my son out to the enemy. You told them exactly when and where his convoy would be. You had him murdered to protect your dirty money. That is a lie, is it? Eleanor pulled out the USB drive. Clayton's face went from ash gray to paper white. Do you know what this is? No answer. This is everything. Eleanor's voice was ice. Every document, every transaction, every communication between you and your contact. Marcus collected it all. He was building a case against you. And he hid it where no one would ever think to look. That is not possible. Clayton's voice cracked. All his evidence was destroyed. I made sure of it. You made sure of the copies he kept on base. Eleanor smiled. It was a terrible smile. The smile of a mother who had waited 20 years for this moment. But Marcus was smarter than you. He made another copy, hid it in his family Bible. And last week I found it. Clayton stumbled backward. His wife caught his arm. Richard, what is she talking about? What evidence? Nothing. It is nothing. She is lying. Am I? Eleanor held up the USB drive. Want me to tell your wife what is on here? Want me to tell your neighbors? She gestured at the houses around them. Curtains were twitching. Doors were opening. The commotion had attracted attention. Keep your voice down. Clayton's words came out as a hiss. Why? Afraid of what people might hear? You do not understand. Clayton ran a hand through his thinning hair. It was not supposed to happen that way. I did not mean for anyone to die. Eleanor went very still. What did you say? I said I did not mean for anyone to die. Clayton's voice broke. I just wanted to scare him. Make him back off. I told them to capture him. Hold him for ransom. Buy me time to cover my tracks. You told who? You know who. The enemies you were selling information to. They were not supposed to kill him. Clayton's eyes were wild, desperate, pleading. I swear to God I never wanted that. It was supposed to be a kidnapping, a negotiation. I was going to pay the ransom myself, get him back, make the whole thing go away. But they did not kidnap him, no. Clayton's voice was barely a whisper. They ambushed the convoy, killed everyone they could. Your son, he ran toward them, drew their fire, saved a lot of people before they got him. Eleanor's knees threatened to buckle, but she forced herself to stand straight, forced herself to meet Clayton's eyes. You killed my son for money I never meant to. You sold him out to save yourself. Please, you have to understand. The only thing I understand is that my boy is dead. Eleanor's voice rose. 20 years I thought he died in a random attack. 20 years I grieved. And this whole time it was you. I am sorry. Clayton fell to his knees right there on his front porch, in front of his wife, in front of his neighbors who were now gathering on their lawns. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Sorry does not bring him back, I know. Sorry does not give me back the 20 years I spent alone. I know. Sorry does not mean anything coming from you. Clayton looked up at her. His face was streaked with tears. Snot ran from his nose. He was shaking so badly he could barely stay upright. What do you want from me? He asked. Eleanor stared down at him. What did she want? For 20 years she had wanted answers. Now she had them. For 20 years she had wanted someone to blame. Now she had him. For 20 years she had wanted justice, and justice was about to arrive. I want you to stand up. Eleanor's voice was still. Face your wife, face your neighbors, and tell them what you did, please. I have children. So did I. The words hit Clayton like a physical blow. He flinched, closed his eyes, swayed on his knees like a man who had just taken a mortal wound. Richard. His wife's voice was trembling. Richard, what is she talking about? What did you do? Clayton looked up at his wife, at the woman he had built a life with, at the mother of his children, at the person who had trusted him for 15 years of marriage. I was a different man, he said. Before you, before the kids, I did things, terrible things. What things? I sold information to the enemy. Clayton's voice was hollow. Equipment, schedules, convoy routes. And when someone threatened to expose me, I had him killed. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. It was 20 years ago. Before we met, before any of this, you murdered someone. I did not pull the trigger. But yes, I had him killed. Sarah backed away from her husband. Her face was white. Her eyes were wide with horror. I do not know you. Sarah, please, I do not know who you are. She turned and ran into the house. The door slammed behind her. Clayton stayed on his knees, staring at the closed door, at the life that had just collapsed around him. The neighbors were openly watching now. Some had their phones out, recording. Others were whispering to each other, spreading the news like wildfire. A police siren wailed in the distance, getting closer. You should go, Clayton said. His voice was dead. Before the cops get here, I am not going anywhere. Eleanor crossed her arms. I have been waiting 20 years for this. I can wait a few more minutes. The sirens grew louder. A Henderson police cruiser turned onto Desert Rose Lane. Then another. Then a third. They pulled up in front of Clayton's house. Officers stepped out, hands on their weapons, assessing the situation. What is going on here? The lead officer called out. This man is wanted for questioning in connection with the murder of a United States soldier. Eleanor's voice carried across the lawn. I have evidence of his crimes. She held up the USB drive. The officer's eyes narrowed. Ma'am, I am going to need you to step back. I am not going anywhere. Eleanor did not move. Neither is he. Not until someone takes this evidence and starts asking the right questions. Another car pulled up. Not a police cruiser. A black sedan with government plates. A man stepped out, tall, gray-haired, military bearing, a face that had seen wars and made hard decisions. Colonel David Hayes. That is far enough, the colonel said to the police officers. This is a federal matter now. The officers exchanged confused glances but held their positions. Hayes walked past them, past the gathering crowd of neighbors, past Jax and Father Mike and Ace, until he stood in front of Eleanor. Mrs. Morrison. His voice was formal but not unfriendly. I have been waiting for this day. Eleanor stared at him. You know who I am? I knew your son. Hayes glanced at Clayton, still kneeling on the porch. And I have spent 20 years trying to prove what this man did. 20 years I was assigned to investigate the ambush that killed Marcus. Found evidence of a leak. Found Clayton's name. Hayes's jaw tightened. But every time I got close, doors closed. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses stopped talking. The cover-up. The Army does not like admitting its people can be traitors. Hayes looked at the USB drive in Eleanor's hand. But with that, we might finally have enough. It is all there. Eleanor handed him the drive. Everything Marcus collected. Everything Clayton tried to destroy. Hayes took the drive carefully, like a man handling something precious. This changes everything, Mrs. Morrison. He looked at her with respect. Your son was a hero, not just in how he died, but in how he lived. He saw evil and refused to ignore it. And even from the grave, he is bringing his killer to justice. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. That is all I wanted, for the world to know the truth. They will know. Hayes pocketed the USB drive. I will make sure of it. He turned to the police officers. Take Raymond Clayton into custody. The charge is conspiracies to commit murder in the death of a United States soldier. More charges will follow. The officers moved forward. Clayton did not resist. He rose to his feet like a man sleepwalking, hands hanging limply at his sides. One officer read him his rights. Another put him in handcuffs. Clayton looked at Eleanor one last time as they led him toward the police cruiser. I am sorry, he said. For what it is worth, I am sorry. Eleanor met his eyes. It is not worth anything. They put him in the back of the cruiser. The door slammed shut. The engine started. And just like that, Raymond Clayton was gone. The crowd dispersed slowly. The neighbors retreated to their houses, buzzing with gossip and speculation. The police cruisers drove away. The black sedan followed. Only the bikers remained. Jax appeared at Eleanor's side. You okay? Eleanor watched the cruiser disappear around the corner. I do not know, she said honestly. I thought I would feel different. Victorious. Satisfied? What do you feel? Empty. Eleanor shook her head. Empty and tired, that is normal. Jax put his arm around her shoulders. Justice does not fill the hole grief leaves behind. It just stops it from getting bigger. Will he go to prison? With that evidence? Well, Jax nodded. For a long time. Good. Eleanor turned away from the house on Desert Rose Lane, away from the basketball hoop and the wind chimes and the shattered remnants of a murderer's perfect life. It was over. 20 years of questions finally answered. 20 years of grief finally given meaning. 20 years of injustice finally corrected. Let us go home, Eleanor said. Jack smiled. Yes, ma'am. The ride back to Oklahoma took 4 days. 4 days of desert and mountains and endless sky. 4 days of small towns and long roads and brothers riding beside her. 4 days for Eleanor to process everything that had happened. Colonel Hayes called her on the second day. The USB drive was a gold mine, he said. Not just evidence against Clayton, but evidence against a whole network of corruption. Contractors, officers, government officials. The investigation was expanding by the hour. Marcus had done more than document one man's crimes. He had exposed an entire system. And it was all coming down. The Washington Post called on the third day a journalist named Catherine Langford. She had gotten wind of the story and wanted an exclusive. Eleanor agreed. The article ran the day after they crossed back into Oklahoma. Military cover-up exposed. Soldier's death was murder. The headline spread across the internet like wildfire. Marcus's photo appeared on every news channel. His story was told on every podcast and radio show. The son Eleanor had thought she knew became a national hero. The murderer who had killed him became a national villain. And the mother who had never stopped searching for the truth became something else entirely. A symbol of justice delayed but not denied. Of love that transcended death. Of a 67-year-old woman who had stared down evil and won. They arrived back at the farm on a Saturday afternoon. Eleanor climbed off Jax's bike and stood in the driveway of her new home. It was beautiful. Craftsman style with a wide porch, solar panels on the roof, fresh paint in colors she loved, a garden already planted with flowers around the foundation. And above the front door, a wooden plaque carved with the Hells Angels' death's head surrounded by angel wings. Home of Eleanor Morrison, mother of the Hells Angels. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Welcome home, Jack said. Home. She tasted the word. She had not had a real home in 22 years. Had almost forgotten what it felt like to have a place where she belonged. This was her place now. Built by brothers, paid for with love, christened with justice. There is one more thing, Jack said. Eleanor looked at him. He reached into his vest and pulled out a small piece of leather. It showed the Hells Angels' death's head with a golden border. Beneath it was stitched a single word. Mother, this has never been given to an outsider, Jack said. Not once in the history of the club. But the presidents of every chapter voted unanimous. Eleanor could not speak. You are not just Marcus's mother anymore. Jax pressed the patch into her hand. You are our mother, all 300 of us. Eleanor stared at the patch, at the symbol of belonging she had never expected to receive. I do not deserve this, she whispered. Yes, you do. Jax's voice was firm. You saved 79 of us from a tornado. You fought for your son's memory. You stood up to a murderer and brought him to justice. You are the strongest woman any of us have ever known. Eleanor closed her fingers around the patch. I accept. Jax's face broke into a rare smile. Then let us make it official. 300 bikers gathered in the field behind Eleanor's new house as the sun began to set. They stood in rows, torches casting flickering light across their faces. Leather vests, chrome buckles. The death's head symbol repeated 300 times, surrounding Eleanor like an army of guardian angels. Jack stepped up onto a small platform. Eleanor stood beside him, still clutching the patch in her hand. Brothers, Jax called out. His voice carried across the gathering. We are here tonight to do something that has never been done before in the history of our club. The crowd fell silent. 20 years ago, a man named Marcus Morrison joined our family, road name Guardian. He was one of the best men any of us ever knew. Brave, loyal, willing to die for his brothers. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Marcus gave his life in service to his country. But before he shipped out, he made us a promise. He asked us to take care of his mother, to treat her as our own, to make sure she never struggled alone. Jax's voice hardened. We failed that promise. For 20 years, Eleanor Morrison struggled alone. She lost her husband, she lost her son. She lost her home, and we were not there for her. Silence, heavy, ashamed. But then fate gave us a second chance. A tornado brought 79 of our brothers to Eleanor's door. And instead of locking herself away, she ran toward them. She saved 79 lives that night. 79 brothers who are here tonight because of her. Jax turned to face the crowd. Eleanor Morrison did not know about Marcus's promise. She did not expect anything in return for what she did. She just saw people in trouble and decided to help. That is who she is. That is who she has always been. He reached out and took the patch from Eleanor's hand. Tonight we are going to keep Marcus's promise. Tonight we are going to give Eleanor Morrison something that has never been given to an outsider in the history of the Hells Angels. He held up the patch so everyone could see. The golden border gleamed in the torchlight. From this day forward, Eleanor Morrison is no longer an outsider. She is no longer just Marcus's mother. She is our mother. Every brother, every chapter, every state. He turned to Eleanor. When she needs help, we answer. When she calls, we come. Because that is what family does. Do you accept this patch? Do you accept us as your family? Eleanor looked out at the crowd. 300 faces, 300 stories, 300 people who had come from all over the country to witness this moment. I accept, she said. The crowd erupted. Cheers, roars. The thunder of 300 voices raised in celebration. Men who had never shown emotion in their lives wiped tears from their eyes. Men who had never called anyone mother embraced the word like a prayer. Jax pinned the patch to Eleanor's shirt, right over her heart. Welcome to the family, Mom. Eleanor could not speak, could barely see through her tears. She just stood there, surrounded by brothers, feeling something she had not felt in 20 years. Belonging. The celebration lasted until midnight. Music played, food appeared, laughter echoed across the Oklahoma night. Eleanor moved through the crowd, accepting hugs and handshakes and stories about Marcus. Around 11, she slipped away, walked toward the small memorial garden beside her house. 79 rose bushes, one for each biker she had saved. And in the center, a stone marker with words carved deep. Marcus Guardian Morrison. A son, a soldier, a brother, forever remembered. Eleanor knelt beside the stone. Hi, baby, she whispered. I got justice for you. The man who killed you is going to prison. The story is out there. The world knows what happened. Your name is cleared. Your legacy is secure. She kissed her fingers and pressed them to the stone. Rest now, baby. You have earned it. I will be okay. I have got 300 brothers looking out for me now. She laughed through her tears. Guess you knew what you were doing after all. She stayed there for a long time, talking to Marcus, telling him about everything that had happened. When she finally stood, her knees aching from kneeling on the cold ground, she felt lighter than she had in years. The weight was gone. 20 years of grief, 20 years of anger, 20 years of loneliness. Gone. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but transformed into something else. Into purpose, into family, into love. Jax found her there as the first light of dawn painted the sky. Long night, he said, long 20 years. Eleanor turned to face him. But it is over now, is it? Eleanor looked at her new house, at the rose garden, at the brothers still gathered in the field, some sleeping, some talking quietly, some just watching the sunrise. No, she said, it is not over. It is just beginning. Jax nodded. What do you want to do now? Eleanor thought about it. For 20 years she had survived, existed, waited to die. Now she had reasons to live. I want to help people, she said, the way you helped me, the way Marcus spent his life helping others, veterans, families who have lost someone in the war and never got the truth, people who were struggling alone because nobody told them there was family waiting. We could do that, Jack said. Set up a foundation. Use the club's resources to find people who need help. The Marcus Morrison Foundation. Eleanor smiled. He would have liked that. Yeah. Jack smiled back. He would have. They stood together watching the sun rise over the Oklahoma fields. The sky turned from gray to pink to gold. The world woke up around them, fresh and new. Thank you, Eleanor said, for everything, for finding me, for telling me the truth about Marcus, for giving me a reason to keep living. Thank you for letting us in, Jack said, for trusting us, for being exactly who you are. Eleanor leaned into him. She had lost everything once, her husband, her son, her home. But standing here, surrounded by brothers, watching the sunrise over her new life, she realized something. She had also found everything, a new home, a new family, a new purpose, and the knowledge that her son, even in death, was still protecting her, still loving her, still watching over her the way he always had, the way he always would. Eleanor Morrison was 67 years old. She had survived 3 tornadoes, buried a husband and a son, lost everything, and found it again. She had stared down evil and won, and now, finally, she was home.